You know, forestry is such an interesting topic. There's so many people against what we do as a forester in British Columbia, or maybe around the world. I love forestry. I moved to BC because of it. It allows me to stay outside, explore around, just know all the different plants, the different critters live in them. It also allows me to pay for my education at UNBC, to put food on the table, to go for a hiking trip with my friends. But how do we consider other values that the forest provide while we're chasing the timber value? With many, many questions in mind, I hop on the bus to NREM 333, aka the Forestry Field Camp they provide at UNBC in summer 2024. You will hear a variety of different opinions of how BC forests should be managed. I sincerely ask you to be kind and please don't judge people's character because what they believe or what they say. This video is highly edited, so you will put our conversation out of context. So please just be open-minded, and I really hope you will like this video.
So my name is Roy Ray, and I am an associate professor here at UNBC in the forestry program, and I have been teaching with Dexter Hodder at the John Prince Research Forest a course called Field Applications and Resource Management since 2003. So it's been 21 years that I've been involved in teaching what our students have come to call field camp. So we do that by teaching them several different modules throughout field camp, and I have experts from the field come in and teach these modules. We have about 15 different modules that we teach during the field school, and they're taught by people that are guide outfitters, people that run open range cattle, by trappers, by people that work doing stream assessments and fisheries. We have a variety of people that are true experts come to the students, teach them what it is that they see in the forest, what it is that they value in the forest that may be different than what the forest companies that these students are working for value out of that forest. In other words, seeing the forest for more than just the boards that are in the forest, but seeing it for all the values that all of society deems that forest contains and that they value.
Day 1, Forestry Roads module. We had 2 harvesting supervisors from Canfor, Danny and Les, to kick off the field school for us.
But yeah, and it's always been the first module. It's always a great module because we get out and we see if we're going to access timber, how do you access timber? Because the entire course is about accessing timber and thinking about the other values that go along with that. So how do we do this thing where we need to access this timber, do it in a responsible and ethical way, and keep other things in mind while we're doing it, especially things like stream crossings. And what's the best way to put this road to bed when we're all done with it? And does it need to be taking up plantable space? And should we actually rehab the road? All of those kinds of things are things that Les and Danny are going to talk to us about today. And from what I understand, we're going to go to some place that isn't too far, out by Tabor.
Yeah, just the other side of Tabor.
Other side of Tabor Mountain.
In British Columbia, you have to go through so many steps before you're even allowed to load bed your machine into the block to start your timber harvesting. Long story short, everything starts with planning. You come up with a block design, you go through the constraints, you consult with local First Nation groups, you consult with your local stakeholders, and they might be back and forth. You come up with a new design, you go through the same process again, and sometimes you don't get a green light, you have to drop the block, or sometimes you get a green light, then you can flip it to the next phase, the layout and cruising, which I did for 4 years before I went back to UNBC. Shameless plug here. I made a video about what we do as a forestry technician in BC. I will drop a link in the description below, so check it out if you want. So after the block is laid out and cruised, you have to go through the appraisal system, get your cutting permit. It's really complicated. I'm not going to jump into details in this video. But you get a cut-in permit, now you're legally allowed to go to a block to start harvesting. As a layout person, talking to the harvesting supervisor and operator who logged my block is one of my favorite things to do. Is my road making sense? Is it too much side cast? Is it too steep? Is it too wet? Is my bridge site making sense? A bridge crossing can cost anywhere from $35,000 up to $600,000 or even more. So a bad fish stream crossing is not just costing a lot of money. You're also at high risk of doing too much earthwork, too much erosion. You're at risk of changing the fish stream original morphology. Danny and Les shared a lot of technical forestry knowledge about road building, sediment and erosion control, road deactivation, stream crossing. It was a very technical first module. It's critical for people working in forestry to know. But if you're not in forestry or if you don't do layout, this might be dry and boring for you. So please forgive me for skipping quite a bit of content here, but I do want to show you some of the Q&A at the very end with Les, Danny, and Mike, which is the foreman for the logging company.
Last question, Hendo.
You got a lot of questions.
I have, if you give me a chance to ask questions, I have 1,000 million questions. This is questions for Les, Mike, and Danny. So what is one of the things from your job, like if Harry Potter shows up tomorrow and then wave the magic wand to get rid of one headache from your job that makes your job so much more painful or hard, what would that be? And the second question is, what do you want us as a student or next generation or the next patch of forest management professionals while we're in school, like what kind of skills you wish we can learn or acquire as a student while we're in school? So 2 questions.
Holy, those are pretty heavy.
Right?
Holy.
That
Mike answers first.
might be a bit of a cop-out, but I think I would like to change the most government permitting. That's my biggest pain, but that's got nothing to do with you guys.
I'm going to agree with Mike on that. If we were to change forestry right now, the bureaucratic nightmare that we have.
Killing it.
And it's not helping anybody. We just got our permit yesterday and it had a 13-page rationale associated with it. Wow. That puts on top. We were talking to Carrier Lumber. They log out at Tejon and they have the Simcoe First Nations out there and they were fully on board. They said, we're happy we're good with you logging this. We're on board. We'll sign off on it. And the government said, well, no, we still have to do a rationale and talk to all the lawyers. And the Simcoe Nation's going, but we agreed to this. Why are we doing it? The Claytonay, Chief Logan, and the Simcoe chief there, same thing. Let us start managing the forest. Like, let's get rid of the bureaucracy and actually start moving forward. So I agree with you.
It's the biggest part.
We're bogging down in the wrong places right now. So.
Yeah, there's enough real problems out there without making
for forestry, for students and all that, when you go through, keep a very open mind, and your side is not always the right side. You have the far right, far left, you have different opinions. Somewhere in between is a good base, and you have to be willing to move towards the center to figure that out. Like, protect everything, stop all this. Well, that doesn't work. Log everything, clear cut it, pave it, put a parking lot there. It doesn't work either, but there's something definitely in between. And keep an open mind and keep thinking of that. And then just because we've been doing something for 10, 15, 20 years doesn't make it good or proper. Maybe we should be I keep going back to like the machine-free zones with the retention of 1,500. I think it's a failure, yet everybody keeps doing it and keeps prescribing it.
Yeah, thinking outside the box, as you were saying earlier, when you see these, get boots on the ground and understand, if you need to build a road, well, where's the material coming from? Or if you, when you're talking about building roads on the flats, well, in the wintertime on the flats, what often happens is the lowest part is the road, and if you get a melt, well, then guess what happens? You got a flooded road.
And I was also thinking, my childish brain, if somebody can make a ray gun that you walk to a plantation and you zap it and it grows at 80 years into the future, and then you just log it again and again and again.
Wow.
You did say a wand.
Hey, you said Harry Potter and a wand.
Yeah, that's fair.
I went there.
That's fair.
So make a ray gun that makes trees grow at accelerated 80 years to 1. And all our problems are solved.
You can just have a silly putty machine that just turns out lumber. You don't even have to have the trees, just one board after another.
Well, we still need jobs.
Yeah, exactly. Calm down.
Yeah,
over
well,
there.
you've heard that in LA they now have restaurants that don't have any people working there. It's all robots.
Yeah.
I would not go there.
Yeah.
Me either.
That's like when
I don't think you're their target audience.
I'm the
guys-
person when I go get a coffee or like a tea, I actually give them cash, and I actually have some people, they stumble and they're like,
Oh, do you ever see them? Yeah, trying to count the change back to you. They're like, nobody knows that.
No.
Because who carries cash?
hell yeah.
You need to.
Apple Pay.
Well, we're going to let you lovely people go. Thank you so much
Yeah, you're quite
for
welcome.
everything that you've done. And Mike, I got to say, I did not know you were going to be out here, so I brought 2 mugs. So I owe you a mug.
That's okay.
And so either,
That's
you
all
know, one of you guys can come to campus and get a mug. All right.
I will donate your money.
All right.
Last,
Thank you, Les.
just a coffee mug.
Thank
And
you.
thank you very much. Let's give them a round of applause, you
Thanks,
guys.
guys.
Thank you so much. I'll get your mug. Thanks.
So I'm hoping you guys.
There are lots of discussion and debate about the current widely used silviculture system in northern BC, which is clear-cut with reserve, followed by tree planting. And generally speaking, license holders are legally obligated to bring the cut block to free growing within 20 years. It's license holders' ability to take care of the block until free growing. There are many people with very strong opinion about the free growing policy, about the brush management, the monoculture, and converting complex forest ecosystem into a homogeneous ecosystem. I can make a 200-hour video covering views from both sides because it's a huge tangled mess with many nuances. Things always get interesting and complicated when money is involved. I still remember the very last chapter of my first year biology textbook was conservation biology, and I remember reading something along the line of effective conservation effort requires financial impact assessment. Without a doubt, as a forestry student, we must understand the environmental side of this multidisciplinary applied science. However, in my opinion, we can't ignore the socio-economic side of forestry when we're pursuing conservation. In reality, forestry support communities and economies. What's the alternative of the current silviculture procedure? How's that going to impact our midterm and long-term timber supply? How is that going to impact communities that are heavily reliant on forestry either directly or indirectly? We're a species famous for making decisions based on our cognitive biases. Regardless if you think it's evil to cut down even one tree in BC, or if you think we can still log our way out of our problems. I guess what I want to say is money is important. Jobs are important, and people should not be demonized talking about money and economy in forestry, just like folks should not be demonized challenging us as foresters why we're screwing up our BC forest management. That's just what I believe, for now at least. So what's your take? How do we balance between protecting the environment and considering the socioeconomic side of forestry? If you got elected as a premier today, what's your vision for future BC forest management? What will be included in your mandate letter to your Minister of Forest? Please leave a comment below. And please be kind, respectful, and open to challenge your own beliefs and perhaps learn something new. Big shout out to our fearless TA, Candace, for handling this big van during our camp. It's not an easy thing to do, as you can see right here. Stay focused. Day 2, 3, 4 of the field camp, we spent most of the time at Aleza Lake Research Forest, which is east of Prince George, and a local guide outfitters
today,
camp.
Yeah, welcome to the Aleza Lake Research Forest. I think most of everybody has been here at least once. Is that correct? Like through soils or some course, whatever. You've been here for some period of time, but just a refresher, we're about a 9,000 hectare research forest. We operate under a special use permit, which is great for us. We get to do a lot with that special use permit. We do pretty much everything that a regular, probably closest to like community forest, but we get a few more benefits with the special use permit just because we are a research forest. We do a lot of research focused things. We're going to show you 3 blocks today. I guess brief history of this block that we're about to go into was IU logs, so essentially high graded in kind of 1960s. We're very close to the east line, which is basically the name of the railway. This used to be like the main railway system that kind of went from Alberta to BC. So there's a lot of history of old sawmills along here. Like there was a family mill just down the road called the Finkner Mill. There was another mill on the research forest. So there's a lot of kind of like horse logging, super early stage logging that happened in this part of the world. And as a result of that, some of our stands came back very heavy to balsam. So this one was a lot of balsam. And as a result of that, it started to get too dense, and then some of it started to kind of just get, our manager Mike, if anybody's ever met him, likes to say long in the tooth. You do not have to write that down, it's not a scientific term. But basically it means it started to get old, and the growth rings stopped actually putting on good growth every year. So that's something that we have to manage for out here is balsam. This block had a lot of it, and we decided to try to do something a little bit different. The harvest system that we used was harvester forwarders. The contractor's name was Kruger Limited. They're through Dunkley. Dunkley is actually a huge partner with us. We have an agreement with them that they basically harvest all of our timber every year or every couple years, depending. So they take care of a lot of that stuff. But they were very excited to allow us to use some harvester forwarders, which is a newer system. I know that some people were here for a tour in the winter that showed the harvester forward was actually here. So if you have any questions, you can ask the people who are here about them. But yeah, that's kind of what happened in here. And just look for the this is everybody. I know this is probably a lot fast right now. It's like the second day of school for you. But the 11 values of FERPA, I wouldn't be able to name them off, don't worry. But just kind of think about all of those values, and then maybe how they're represented in the block, and try to go away from just the timber value that everybody thinks about all the time. So try to think about the other 10 and maybe where they're represented in the block as we walk through for the first 10 minutes, 15 minutes. But anyways, so yeah, as you can tell, it's different. The harvester forwarder system in here can do quite a bit more in terms of retention. Basically, the prescription for this block was to take everything merch. This does look significantly different than a lot of licensee blocks. There's a reason for it. There's a lot of other reasons other than just, oh, you can and can't do it. But for us, this is something that we can do, and this is something that we're pretty proud of, actually. So yeah, I mean, there's some the kind of striped candy striped ribbon, orange. You'll see they should strictly be on dug firs. That's something that's in our management plan. Is any dug fir over a certain size, specifically I think it's like 20 or 18 dBH is supposed to be left. So we do try to retain most dug firs, and then yeah, the rest of it is a lot of birch, a lot of coniferous, regen understory. So yeah, that's kind of, like I said, the prescription. We've got the
Somebody asked a question at this moment, and it was, why did you retain Douglas fir in comparison to other species? And let's hear what they have to say.
Doug fir, why we want to keep them is, one, we keep them on, I love to keep the ones on the ridge tops, because one of the ideas is that thinking about climate change, like if the climate does shift here, if like it becomes drier sites on the ridge tops, Doug fir will do decently well there anyways. And we leave them as seed trees, kind of like leaving a legacy behind. And it also just adds a little bit more biodiversity, I guess.
Yeah, biodiversity is a big one, and then yeah, he said choose seed trees, but the big one is kind of biodiversity and the fact that they're just not as common, so we don't want to just have them removed. It doesn't mean that every single dug fir on this block was saved. I mean, me and John did walk through here and try to ribbon as many as you can, but you miss them. But we do like to try to keep as many, and specifically for this block we did ribbon them. We don't ribbon them in every block, but specifically for this one we did, just because we didn't know exactly how good the harvester forwarder would be at spotting them, just because you never know with certain operators, and the retention in this block was a little higher, so we wanted to just make an emphasis for it. So that's kind of why that was the way it was. Any other questions?
Harvester cut and processed the log at the stump, leaving all the slash at the stump as well. And typically we don't do any piling and burning for harvester forwarder system. So I had a question about the fire hazard.
One of the common criticism for like stump set processing is the fine fuel.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts about the fine fuel or like the fire? It's not in the fur cut value, but like.
Yeah. So basically you're talking about slash on the block, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. After like as soon as this was done, you were here. There's a lot that we kind of saw, and we have a plan, or we have a part of the management plan that prescribes that any kind of area along the road's going to get fuel managed in the terms of all this fine fuels are going to be piled and potentially burnt. But honestly, the amount that it has dropped this year, this summer, this field season, whatever you want to say, and hopefully into the fall as well, is pretty significant. Like, we're pretty confident that, I mean, who's a planter? Do you have any planters in the group? Nope. One planter? Maybe. Oh man. Usually there's female planters. Anyways, there are plantable areas, is the point of that, in this area, despite the amount of slash. So yes, it's a concern.
One of the things we're hoping for is that the next snowpack will pack it down even a lot more.
Yeah.
So it'll break it down, because you could see it already broke down since we harvested. It was a lot worse when they would. But then we had a snowpack, then it got to this level, so we're kind of interested to see what it will look like next summer.
Yeah, and another caveat to kind of just throw into this is all these blocks today are operational, and Dunkley and us did profit from them, but they are experimental in a sense. So just remember that, you know, as you kind of go through the day, that we have the ability to do these. Not everybody has the ability to do these. So yes, it's nice to see. But there is a sense of experiment to them, and that's kind of what the point of the research forest is, to show people that you can do this, but there is a ton of reasons why ministry, licensees, whatever, would say that this isn't possible in some senses. We'd like to make that a little bit more common, but at any rate.
Roy asked a question about the stumpage right here. If you don't know what stumpage is, it's basically tax you have to pay to the government when you extract timber from the Crown land. And the unit is $1 per meter cubes.
Our stumpage is like 25 cents. Like, that's kind of the reality of the situation. I think community forests are like $5, and then licensees are a lot. So yeah, we've had some tours out here, and licensee people, CAMFOR, ministry, they look at it, and I think, I'm not sure if you'll talk to any licensee or other licensees or any ministry people, but you'll hear a lot of them talk about the fact that stumpage is a huge factor. Because we're a special use permit, we have a different stumpage, and that allows us to do this, and allows Dunkley to allow us to do this. So you know, I can't give you exact numbers on what the profits or the revenue or whatever money-wise this was. All you kind of need to know is that it is significantly different, and it does play a factor in the ability for us to do these things. It also, with our special use permit, we're 9,000 hectares, we're research forest, same thing with John Prince. John Prince is a lot bigger, but same idea in terms of the special use permit. It gives the research forest, there's another one in Williams Lake, Alex Fraser, all the research forests around the province. I will say that we do exist in a bit of a gray area because we are a special use permit. Other special use permits that exist are things like gravel pits or
logging camps.
Yeah, logging camps. Like, this special use permit is pretty unique to research forests, and that means that honestly, I wouldn't say we get forgotten, but we do. The limelight is rarely on us in terms of following or having to be involved in some of those big discussions that every licensee and even some community forest woodlots get involved in with stumpage rates, and just having to maneuver the ever-changing world of forestry in BC. We just don't ever have to dive so deep into those waters like a lot of licensees do.
A little analogy on that is that getting the benefits that we do as a research forest, it allows us to see what's physically possible. Sure, it doesn't allow us to see what's practically possible in terms of licensees and stuff like that, other licensees, but we get to see what's possible physically. So we at least get to try new things. And I think that's what's really important to, somebody needs to start somewhere.
And you'll see the same ideas at John Prince, that they do lots of things different as well, and it has to do with the ability of the special use permit. And yeah, reality is Dunkley, Canfor, Toco, whatever, they can't do everything that we do. Ministry, all the same, they can't do what we do, just because of some of the money stuff. Like, the money reigns supreme a lot of the time. It's a bit unfortunate. I'll challenge you to try not to think too much about the money side of it, because it's a crucial factor, but it's not the only factor. So yeah, I hope that kind of answers the question you have.
The staff and the foresters at Aleza Lake Research Forest did a fantastic job demonstrating the 3 blocks that they did in the past winter. The block I just showed you was essentially a modified clear cut with retention, but it also showed us a commercial thinning block and my favorite, which was a single tree selection block using tree marking. I filmed more than 4 hours of footage at the Aleza Lake Research Forest that day. There is no way I can show you every single details I've learned in this video. I'm just really grateful that there are researchers up here in northern BC to showcase how forestry can physically be done. Like John and Cam mentioned before, having an area-based tenure and a fixed 25 cents per cubic meter stumpage rate allowed them to do many new and innovative things while profiting from the forest. Perhaps many foresters initially get into forestry because they have this fundamental love towards nature, a passion for the outdoors, or they just hate the ordinary 9-to-5 office job, I don't know. But many of us got promoted after working in the bush for a couple of years, and all of a sudden you have to worry about budgets, log costs, profits, keeping the mill running, and making sure people don't get laid off. How can we apply the new innovative forestry at a bigger scale while keeping the mill running? I'm continuously looking for an answer as well. In the afternoon, we hopped on a jet boat heading towards a local guide outfitter's camp. Mike Morris, the elected MOA for the PG and Mackenzie area, was also at the camp to share his thoughts and visions on current BC forest management issues. He has some strong opinion, and I would like to politely ask you again to not attack either him or those who might disagree with him. I hope we're still living in a society where, even though I might fundamentally disagree with what you say, but I still honor your right to fully express your thoughts and concern respectfully. Mike Morris gave us a long speech like any other politician would. What stuck out the most, for me at least, was his point of replacing the chief forester with the chief forest ecologist. Instead of prioritizing timber value, doing timber supply review, and setting up annual allowable cut, we need someone who can include hydrologists, biologists, ecologists, and experts from different fields to manage BC forests in a way to bring back the world-famous biodiversity and a truly sustainable forest industry that benefits the communities till the end of the time. Forestry is a critical source of income for many small rural communities, including First Nation communities up here in northern BC. It's obviously a very sensitive topic, but I asked Mike, how do we approach as forest professionals when the First Nation wants to aggressively log in their traditional territory, as we have already witnessed here in the PGTSA?
It's difficult, when you get into First Nations politics and stuff, and that's what happened in that one particular band. Because I know what you're talking about. I've met with a number of chiefs. John French for Tackle Nation is doing a great job up there in trying to mitigate the loss of forest cover. And I met with the chief for the Platelet, and I said, what's the important values for you? When we're looking at Section 35 rights under the Constitution, for rights and title on the land of the First Nation, trapping rights. She said moose and marten. Those are the top values for us. But they've got a partnership with Canfor. And I said, okay, well, you got a tough job ahead of you. If you have moose and marten are your top value, that doesn't go hand in hand with clear cutting. That goes hand in hand with an ecological approach to forestry. So there's a lot of pressure on her and on any First Nations when you have a company waggling millions of dollars in front of you, and every First Nations can use every single dollar that they can get. But also you're giving up the future for your band by clear cutting and eliminating that biodiversity for the next 7 generations. And so, but I see things turning around. A lot of, government said we're going to give First Nations 400 cubic meters of wood in this particular area. But what they don't tell the First Nations is that it's not there yet. We got to wait for 40, 50, 60, 70 years before that 400 meters grows enough. And that's based on, the average of 3 cubic meters per hectare per year. Well, those calculations aren't perfect either. That's taken the best data in the best bioclimatic zone in BC, and that might be good for that. But when we look at areas in the interior, we might be down to 1 cubic meter per hectare or 0.5 cubic meters per hectare in some of the areas that we have. So we can't give it that base number right across the board. That's why we need to take that ecological approach. It's a dilemma, and I really, my heart goes out to chief and councils in any band in British Columbia because of the pressure they're under, not only from their own band members, but also from industry. And government, quite frankly, I think needs a kick in the ass too, because they have put a lot of pressure in decision making on First Nations that the First Nations don't have the resources to make those kinds of decisions. And
that's a 100% awesome statement.
Yeah, the other part of it too is industry has taken advantage of that, just with some of the rhetoric that they put out there, making it look to the general public who don't know anything, like forestry. I've had my head buried on a forestry pail for 20 years and I'm just starting to figure it out now. The average person has no idea what's going on. They see a tree, they don't know what it is, and they don't know all the different issues behind that. So they will look at it, and industry will say, well, we can't get any cutting permits because it's tied up in the First Nations. They need to make a decision on that, which is bullshit. And it's causing a divide in British Columbia between First Nations and regular citizens and First Nations. And government needs to fix that. It's government's job to make sure that that doesn't happen.
I had a comment for Mike's statement at this point. As he mentioned that the industry is pointing fingers at the First Nations for having a hard time getting cutting permit. However, I've talked to quite a few of permitting foresters from different companies, and often the licensees and First Nation have already agreed on developing certain areas. But when the licensee is applying for a cutting permit from the government still wants to consult the First Nation groups who have already approved logging. And that process can take months. Therefore, the government bureaucracy is also blamed for having a hard time getting the cutting permits.
It's a mess. And plus we're fighting over scraps now because there's really nothing left out there. When we look at I was speaking with a district manager in Prince George not too long ago. Somebody told me that the average tree age in the Prince George Timber Supply area is 45 years old. And when he told that to me, I was shocked. But then I went out and I did a bunch of research on that, and I don't think that person was far off. So I put it to the district manager, and he nodded. And well, 45-year-old tree in the largest timber supply area in the province, 8 million hectares or 9 million hectares or whatever you got, that's a pretty sad state of affairs. And we're not alone. All the rest are, I've been dealing with the Mackenzie Timber Supply review and stuff going on here. It's in sad shape as well. There's nowhere that we have a supply of harvestable wood, in my view.
You guys, Mike's gonna get going before it gets dark, but he just told me that it's okay if any of you have any questions. I've got his contact information. You can contact him directly, and he's a busy guy, but he will eventually get to you. And Mike, we just want to say thanks so much for coming out. You are very busy. It's not much, but we got a little UNBC coffee mug for you there to say thank you.
Well, thanks very much.
And
Well, you know what?
we hope that we can get you to come out every year from here on out. We really appreciate it.
I enjoy this. I enjoy talking to like-minded individuals and people that are concerned about our forestry. I expect big things from this class.
That's right.
Down the road.
You guys are going to shake it up.
So do I.
Can I get a picture of the three?
Yeah.
Hey, boys.
The second day of the field camp was packed with information. Lots of thinking, lots of discussions. Everyone was exhausted that night, and I slept in an 8-person bunkhouse and woke up multiple times to dudes snoring symphony. And don't worry, I was a key player of the band as well, and apparently it sounded more like a chainsaw that night. Day 3, we switched up the gears and jet boating to one of the Scots overnight hunting stands and practiced our moose call in the field. It was a lot of fun.
Not from your throat, yep. And then open it up here.
I feel dumb.
No, don't feel dumb. Everybody feels. I feel dumb doing it right now. Yeah, that would be a good calf call.
Cooper, do it.
I can't.
Not like many hunters grew up hunting with their families. I got into hunting last year with 0 experience. Big shout out to Kyle for giving me so many hunting tips and guidance. He has a YouTube channel documenting his hunting adventures, so please check it out if you want.
I hear where you're coming from. I totally.
Just when you're having too much fun in the field, Roy slapped an assignment on our faces to remind us this is still an university course and not just a summer getaway camp. The assignment was essentially having students represent Aleza Lake Research Forest and then come up with a block design within the research forest and then communicate with Scott, who is the guide outfitter owning the exclusive guiding right for 3,000 square miles of land adjacent to the research forest. Scott's access to his guiding camp goes right through the Aleza Lake Research Forest. However, we also need the fiber to pay the bills to keep the research forest functioning. And our goal was to present our block to Scott and have him on board on our logging plans.
Okay. So let's see what you got to go, and
So
I'll try not to be too hard on you.
to start off, our first area that we're looking at was going to be right here, and then the second one was right down here,
No,
right?
it was
Or
right here.
Right in here. Okay. We're thinking of doing a regular clear cut with reserve. However, what we really wanted to implement in this zone was the dash distance WTPs, and hopefully get more information regarding whether or not those WTPs would actually be used by moose that are coming in the area. We feel that, like, again, there's been no research done on these dash distances and WTPs if they actually work. I think this gives us an opportunity to set up some cameras in some of those WTPs to see if the road traffic that might spook a moose, if they're actually running into these WTP areas. We were hoping to get a little feedback from you as well on.
You're going to get some feedback, I'll tell you.
Yeah,
right now.
no, for sure.
Because the number one thing that I can't stand
Yeah.
is cutting alongside of the main road.
Okay.
Okay? I've been dealing with the university for quite a few years, and I've been very good. We've been working back and forth, and they've been doing their thing, and I've been doing my thing. But I'm coming to a head where I don't want to see any more logging done on the main road. My clients come for a remote wilderness experience,
Yep.
and if they drive in the whole way from the blacktop to the river and it's nothing but a clear cut, they're gonna look at me like, what the hell is this remote wilderness experience?
Of course.
It's a bunch of logged off areas. So you're talking 100 feet. Could we put some boots on the ground and go for a walk, and then you show me what you think is good for your end, and then I'll show you what I think is good on my end.
Sure.
Because I don't want to be able to see into those blocks at all. I don't even want to know there's a block there. So if you go far enough back, you should be able to go far enough back and still get your fiber. I don't want to stop you guys from logging. Logging's cool, I get it. I got lots of friends that are loggers, but I want to make sure that I can't see that cut block from the road. Now, there's not only me, there's other users as well. Okay, so there's the trappers in the area, there's the bird and bunny huggers, there's the people that take pictures of shit, there's the mushroom pickers, there's a whole bunch of other things that you guys got to think about. And that actual piece and area right in there is a super hypersensitive mushroom picking ground as well. Okay, and they're usually within 300 to 400 meters off the road. They don't go much further than that. So how far do you think you can actually push that boundary back from the edge of the road?
I mean, in theory, as far as we wanted to, but in practice, we would have to probably have boots on the ground in there to see what, assess the timber, see what's actually going on in there.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, if there's a little bit of a hill or anything that could help us,
yeah,
I'm cool with using that. That's fine. But what I just don't want to see is these. You drive down and there's like 30 feet of trees. It's a frickin' joke.
Yeah.
Like, it's a joke. It's not going to stop nobody from looking in that cut block, right?
No, I totally agree.
It's got to be something substantial enough that you can't see in that block. Like I said, I prefer to not even know there's a block in there.
Yeah.
I prefer if you could go and take the center core of that out with some access somewhere and then kill that access and then come down and take the center core of this out.
Scott's biggest concern is visual screening along the main road in the research forest. Visual screening also provides a sense of fair chase for the animals because hunters can't just shoot a gigantic bull right off the road. His second biggest concern is having the cut block too close to the river, which not only is his main guiding area, but also is the prime habitat for moose. The third is access control, so people can't get too close to his cabin and his stands using those spur roads in the block. They spent almost 40 minutes back and forth on some of the details of the block, including promoting a moose habitat post-harvest to benefit Scott's business. I think both parties walked out of the room pretty happily.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. You're welcome. Thanks for having me in my house.
Yes, thank you.
Good stuff.
Nice to talk to you.
You bet. Thanks. Good to see you again. And you, cameraman, fantastic.
Yeah.
Anybody that wants to come by, they want to get away from town for a couple of days or something, please get a hold of us. We'll probably do some work, but it won't be hard work. And if somebody comes in, we'll work like 4, 5, 6 hours a day max, and then we take the rest of the day off. Hopefully it's nice and sunny, and we hang out, do a little fishing, a little farting around, maybe a little jet boat and something like that. Just make it fun and interesting, and then we feed you like kings. So, if anybody's interested, please get a hold of Roy. We're pretty easy to find. We don't go too far, so it's open anytime anybody'd like to come back and have a visit. So appreciate you guys all coming. It was a great crew, and I had a fantastic time with all of you. It was really, really good.
Thank you, Scott.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Scott.
Really appreciate it. Okay, you guys, let's load up and
We waved bye to Scott and Lynn and headed back to our last module at the Aleza Lake Research Forest, which was fish and shrimp classification. Reese, UNBC alumni, RP Bio, a fish biologist from DWB, came and showed us how to shock a shrimp and properly do a shrimp classification, which is the fundamental skill that all forestry tech and foresters need to master.
I think it's working. Okay, stirred it up. There's one. Oh, did we get that bucket to keep it in the water? Yeah. Right there, right there, right there. Oh, there he is.
Whoa.
It's another one that just walked in.
Oh, if I'm like pushing like this, the fish at the edge of the current, they'll get scared off. So one technique is to
start over here and pull them. They'll kind of get pulled toward you.
In layout business, we love to put rookies on stream tasks. It's normally the worst walking area within the block, but the task itself is relatively easy compared to boundary and row layout most of the time. Starting very early in your layout career, I guarantee you we run into a situation where different people tell you different ways of doing exactly the same thing. A fish stream to your boss might be a non-classified drainage for a boss's boss. An inoperable slope on the book might be a keep it in the block, loggers will figure out kind of slope to your supervisors. Different licensees follow the same regulations, but will come up with different interpretations. Nature is such a complex system that we really don't know too much about. Any anthropogenic way to classify or categorize this complex system always yields outliers, leading to confusion in the field. Stream classification is no exception.
Have you ever shocked a stream that's organically for substrate, but there's a fish in there?
Oh yeah.
Yeah?
Absolutely.
So there's a myth about being a stream, a fish-bearing stream. It has to be 100 meters, it has to be alluvial substrate, it has to have continuous channel with scouring, and as soon as you have organic substrate, you downgrade to non-fish-bearing stream.
Yeah.
Is that a thing that sounds right to you?
Nope. You can have fish-bearing NCDs that are dry for 90% of the year, and in the spring during freshet, fish will come up there, and it's fish-bearing.
I think we saw one of those on our very first trip for the field trip.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
It was completely dry. They went to the effort to put a bridge in it, and everybody's like, "Why did you put a bridge unless it's dry?"
Yeah, absolutely. And not just NCDs. There's plenty of streams. Not so much around here, but you go up to the Peace, where a lot of those streams are purely snowmelt, big flows in the spring, and then they go completely dry in the summer. It's 50 meters of dry stream bed, still fish bearing. You have to manage it as it is fish bearing.
And then speaking of the classification for fish stream, for continuous channel with scouring, how much scouring are we talking about? Because some of the NCD, you can see there's a little depression. You can picture the water go through that, but it's just like how much scouring is considered as a scouring.
I mean, it amazes me where I find fish sometimes. Like, you'll come on a little S6, S4, which is less than 1.5 meters wide, and it goes subsurface through the moss and the vegetation, and then up above that you'll find fish. Sometimes too with barriers, you have to do your research prior to, because there could be a lake upstream with fish. If there's any fish-bearing waters upstream, they can always come downstream. So that's like I climbed up a 5-meter tall waterfall, and we didn't know that there was fish, like a lake upstream with fish in it, and we shocked and like, what? Why is there fish here? But, so that's important to know. Yeah, they'll, like, sometimes you'll come across a stream, it's totally dry, and then you go upstream and there is some flow, and then it goes subsurface, and then there's sections of subsurface flow and little isolated pools, and there can be fish in those pools as well. So yeah, you got to know the species as well. Like rainbow trout are mountain climbers, and bull trout more than any other fish. Like, you're gonna find suckers and minnows in the bigger systems and like closer to mainstem rivers, whereas when a lot of the forestry blocks are typically higher up. So you'll be looking for rainbows mostly in bull trout. But, yeah.
Reese, we've probably used the word fish 300 times so far this morning.
Yeah.
Can you tell, now I hope it's not this way anymore, and we've had a lot of discussions over the years, but when we started doing this, a stream wasn't classified as a fish-bearing stream unless it had a certain kind of fish. You might catch a fish, but it's not the kind of fish that qualifies it to be considered a fish-bearing stream. Can you talk a little bit about that and how it's changed over the years, I hope?
Yep.
Or if it hasn't, maybe why it should?
Yeah, it has changed. It used to be only sport fish were considered fish, and suckers and minnows were not. So if you caught only suckers or minnows in here, it would not be fish bearing. Throw a corduroy crossing in there and fill it with snow and away you go. But now all fish are fish, and any fish caught is fish bearing.
And then a lot of time, like for artificial feature that we don't classify, but there's one point, especially on those old cable blocks, because right now we're harvesting the stuff above the cable block, like the balls in the SSF area. And then walk through those steep blocks, and there's old road. The stream goes down, and there's no water management back in the days, and then just water goes to the road, and then follow the road down.
Yeah.
And then so stream, like a channel, everything matches the stream classification requirements, but it's on a human-built road.
Yeah.
You're falling down the road all the way. So the channel morphology completely changed after harvesting. So how do we classify stuff like that? Because if you have to walk the road down and call that a stream, it creates a lot of trouble for foresters.
Yeah, that's a good question. I came across one that was like an S2 with super organic substrates up and downstream, and it hit a culvert, and the culvert was really undersized, and in the spring it flowed over the culvert onto the road and then down the road, which is beautiful spawning gravels, and then back into the stream, and there's rainbow trout like this long. It was down by Green Lake in 100 Mile area, like big rainbow trout in there, and suckers along those suckers. They're all spawning on the road because it's like beautiful gravel. I'm like, oh my god, like, well, this is great. Like this is great for fish. So it's, but obviously there probably should be a bridge there, a bigger culvert. I mean, I wouldn't classify that as like as a reach or the channel. I would just make a note, like
making notes.
The stream hits the road, it flows on the road, and then it gets, it's like, yeah, you're not going to classify the stream based on that.
Gotcha.